I also want to take a couple of minutes and give you guys a couple of announcements based on some conversations that we're having amongst our leadership here at Jamestown Harbor Church. So this is, if you're new here, this is some inside information, but it's okay. We're pretty transparent. We want you on the inside. So a couple of things for you guys to know. The first is, if you are on our email list, you might have gotten an email from me this week to tell you about a conversation that our leadership is having. Our leadership has been talking with another church in our community, Sunrise Ministries. We've worshiped with them a couple of times. They're a portable church just like we are, and sometimes we don't get our buildings, so we've teamed up together, and we've begun a conversation with them about what it might look like to develop a strategic partnership or even a strategic merger together. And so we have been having that conversation, and over the next couple of months, we're going to have that conversation a little more intentionally. So you may hear some things about that. We wanted you to know a couple of things from our perspective on the front end. First, we want you to know that this is a conversation, and that is it. At this point, we have made no decisions. If we're going to make any decisions, we're going to have that conversation amongst our church as well. But we are curious to see how God is leading us to partner with other brothers and sisters in Christ. We do not know how that will end. We do not know what that will look like, but we just want to ask the question. What could we do together? And so the second thing I want you to know is the only reason we're having that conversation is because we think we want to ask God if there's a way for us to impact our community better together than apart. And so again, we don't know what that looks like, but that is the only question we're asking. We're not doing that for any other reason. We have a couple of strong and growing churches that love this community and want to see the gospel move forward. And so we're just having that conversation together. I hesitate to even tell you a lot of that because I don't have any details for you. But I know that conversation gets out there in the public sphere, so I wanted you to hear it from us and to know where we're at and where we're doing. We're trying to follow God's leading in that. So my ask for you is that you would pray for our leaders, pray for our churches, and pray that we could together figure out better ways to help more people find their way back to God. So that's one. Secondly, I want to tell you another decision that we've made as a leadership body, as I've been talking this week and the last couple of weeks with our leadership team and with our staff, really about some of this conversation about where God's leading us in the future. We've decided that in the midst of some of those conversations and some of those changes, that we're going to postpone adding a second service. We were originally planning on doing that on October 9, and now we've decided, let's wait a little bit. Let's see where God leads in our conversations. Let's see where he pulls us forward and take a better view of our future if we pause for a moment. So we still think God might be calling us in that direction. We just feel like October 9 is probably not the timing of that. So I have a couple of different feelings around that. I think I feel great because it allows us for our volunteers to sort of catch up in the new space and not feel overly stretched. But I also sort of have these conflicting emotions like, God, did we not hear you right? Did we make a different decision than what we were supposed to? And I may be the only one in the room who feels immediately like a failure when life changes. It probably is just me. But as we've talked with our leadership team, as we've talked with our staff, I've realized that our role is simply to try to follow God as much as we possibly can. And we realize that we have some new conversations that are happening in our church that weren't there 2 months ago, that weren't there 3 months ago. And so we continue to try to follow him and say, God, where are you leading us? Even if that means we change a direction. So I want to, in the meantime, ask you for a couple of things. Because I don't want to be careful that we don't push pause on caring about our community and reaching our community. I think we have ways in which we're going to try to increase our capacity even in this 10 a.m. service over the next few months. But in the meantime, I want to ask you for a couple of things. First, I want to ask you to invite people to experience what you've experienced. We have a brand new sermon series starting on October 9 called Jesus for President because it's election season, so that ought to be interesting, right? I'd encourage, we designed these series so you can invite friends and family and neighbors into this thing because we think that God has a message for them and we want them to hear that. So I want to encourage you to be invitational, to invite people to hear what you've experienced. We have another outreach event coming up this fall and invite people into that. We want to be an invitational church. Second, I want to invite you to get engaged in our mission. Just because we're not adding a second service doesn't mean all the spots